Hi, everybody. David Noor. Want to welcome you to another episode of our Intelligent Growth with my business partner, Jen Cords. Hello, Jen.
Good morning, Noor.
It's good to be with you. And for our audience, again, the background maybe look a little different. I'm back on the road delivering a keynote today and moderating a leadership retreat tomorrow. But obviously, this content and our discussions around continue to drive intelligent and hopefully profitable growth, ideally through your relationships, is important to Jen and me. So we thought we want to share an idea that and it's really some insights that we're continuing to see in the market. And this is not just in good economies or challenging ones. It literally is omnipresent. Now, the volume of these things go up and down considerably, but what we're talking about is really mergers and acquisitions. And as our audience and certainly a lot of P&L leaders understand, organic growth is ideal because you have the most control over it, and it's slow and steady, and allows you to really build and scale your culture, your capabilities, your tech stack, a lot of the things that you may have heard Jen and I talk about in the past. The fundamental challenge with organic growth is it takes time. Think about growing a plant. Think about raising a child or taking care of an animal. All those things, that nurturing, that feeding, that caring takes time, and as does organic growth. M&A becomes a great opportunity to add on additional capabilities, functionality, customer base, get into net new markets. So as we'll talk about today, a lot of great opportunities with M&A. There's also a lot of challenges. There's particularly when it comes to, and we want to stay in our wheelhouse, within profitable growth, within the marketing, sales, customer success, growth strategy, wheelhouse function, if you will. There's definitively some challenges. And as the tech stack, and Jen will talk about this, becomes more complicated, as relationships become increasingly more hybrid, so it's not just your team and your team in the same office. It literally becomes a global team that works remote, or it's a combination of both full-time folks, but also a lot of independents and really subject matter experts in different areas. The culture becomes even a greater issue. Jen, let me pause. Your comments, your thoughts on organic versus inorganic, and the challenges you've seen, you've heard around M&A.
Well, one of the biggest challenges around M&A is having an effective strategy to merge the teams together, both people, capability, tech stack. And so having a roadmap, if you will, is one of the biggest benefits that a strategic M&A plan can have. The other thing is that, to your point, organic growth can be really hard and it takes time, but also a good M&A strategy also expands into adjacencies that allow you to sort of round out a company's portfolio by acquiring other companies and their technology or people.
Love that, and the opportunity for again, talent. If almost inevitably every leader I'm talking to continues struggles with the right talent DNA in the right role with the right capabilities, and not just what we need them to do today, but how do we anticipate what they need to do in the future. So as Jen mentioned, the right strategy makes certainly identifying, and we'll talk about in many ways like the theater act, before, during, and after, identifying the right professional marriages, identifying the right bolt-on to your product portfolio, identifying a relevant adjacency to kind of add to your core business becomes really, really critical. So again, this episode's focused on M&A challenges and opportunities in fueling profitable growth. Just a quick reminder, our focus, our passion is really help leaders and their teams optimize their increasingly hybrid relationships. And just as a clarifying comment, hybrid is increasingly the digital or virtual, in person or physical, and increasingly global, whether it's through your supply chain or your customer base, really understanding how to nurture relationships, again, online or offline, across previously perceived cultural barriers becomes a continued challenge for many organizations. We're a big fan of really executives focusing on their top line growth. I don't know of a business that can cut its way to growth. So we continue to look for who's really looking for innovative ideas. I'm with a fabulous company, today and tomorrow, and they're constantly, they've grown in the core market. It is absolutely the tree trunk of what they believe in. But the CEO of the dinner last night, we were talking about this, absolutely concerned about the threats to their top line. So they're also acquiring other tangential businesses in their core market, in their core business. So this continues to be a challenge. And again, idea of relationships as a enabler, as a strategic enabler to really driving that enterprise growth. Again, McKinsey talks about experience-led growth. And a big part of Jen's focus on RevOps, we have zero clients who are investing in their RevOps infrastructure, in really tech enabling their business because they're bored or because they have nothing else to do. What they realize is the potential gain in operational efficiency, in reducing redundancies, in how do we better identify lookalikes to our existing relationships that like us, trust us, have bought from us, continue to buy from us. So again, the customer lifecycle journey, and particularly we call it a maturity model, it really encompasses that digital relationship that every company wants and needs to build. So as you can see, if you've spent any time on our website or a previous episode, 7 critical steps from awareness all the way through purchase, where we talk a lot about relationships really start when they buy. And as Jen often talks about, the adoption, the impact, the evangelism on the right-hand side, and the experience that you create for those customers after they buy become critical. And we'll talk about this beyond the qualitative data, the qualitative perceptions, insights of where we do this really well, where we're struggling. Our global research is starting to highlight, and we are overlaying a quantitative model through our partnership with Versalytics, and really helping organizations understand the impact, not just what, but now the so what, and how do we go, really optimize how we go to market, our various motions, and really optimize the relationships along this journey. Jen, your comments on the lifecycle journey and the scorecard.
Yeah, so we've talked about it several times in the past. The journey itself is why we call it a maturity model, is because stages of companies will be doing parts of it really, really well and have it seamless. When a company has intentionally thought about their marketing, sales, and customer success and how all of those functions work together seamlessly with the lens of what's best for the customer and that user experience, is when they've really hit a level of maturity in their organization that sets them apart from everybody else. And so the scorecard that we've been developing is a way for people to grade themselves and see how they're performing against not only other departments within their organization potentially, but also how are they standing up to maybe industry benchmarks or other people in their space or adjacent companies that they may be competitors to.
We're really excited about this scorecard and are taking CMOs, CROs, chief customer officers through it. And again, not just I'm showing it to this leadership team both today and tomorrow. And it's not just about us or them, and hey, we can sell it, but marketing can't deliver, or customer success, can't really retain and develop that client. How do we really start talking about we challenges, we opportunities? How do we ensure that, again, the example, the analogy we often use is that passing of the baton becomes seamless throughout the organization. And you certainly see that the executives get it. One of the things we look at is this cascading down through the rest of the organization. And does the rest of the team understand that we're going to win or lose as a we're going to retain that client as a we're going to develop and really deepen that relationship with the client as a So the sooner we start talking about we challenges and we opportunities, the sooner we're going to be able to not just pinpoint where some of our challenge opportunities are, but really do something about it, really transform our processes, elevate our capabilities, and deepen our tech stack. So this idea of relationships fueling that intelligent and profitable growth is as relevant if you're just expanding. So we work with a number of early stage companies. By the same token, for the mature companies in mature industries, whether you're integrating or optimizing part of your business, and again, we talk a lot about M&A opportunities in this episode, or trying to transform your business model, your go-to-market strategy, these strategic relationships we've seen consistently elevate one organization against its competitive peers. Equally competent people, equally valuable products and services, the breadth, depth, and the relevance with which they build relationships begins to really create a very visible market delineation. So most M&As often begin with a thesis. We are a growing player. We may be the dominant player. We might be the strong second tier player. There's a current state of where we are. And the thesis becomes, if we, and we kind of do a spatial awareness of the space, both known competitors, known complementary providers, and a lot of times you hire outside resources to identify the lesser known, or perhaps the international, or perhaps a entity within an organization that should ideally be divested. So you start with a thesis, and the thesis becomes, how do we grow? How do we grow this business? How do we grow our top line? How do we grow our customer base? How do we expand a declining market? I've always said you don't want to be the best saddle maker when everybody else is buying cars, right? So how do we stabilize our financials? How do we expand, again, our customer base? How do we add talent? So if the thesis becomes that driving force of why we need to do this, a critical step becomes, how do we leverage acquisitions? And there's all kinds of different types, and we can certainly get into that different time, but how do we leverage acquisitions to not incrementally, and that's the real opportunity, is incremental growth for most organizations, most industries will come. How do we look for exponential opportunities? How do we really identify that upside growth that can come from any of these? Jen, your comments?
Well, I think one of the biggest benefits of M&A is that expansion and is that lens on growth. And a lot of the big tech companies actually acquire most of their innovation, like Microsoft and Google. A lot of those innovative ideas or things that we know and love about them actually were developed through acquisition and then seamlessly incorporated into their portfolio. So doing this well, doing M&A well, really does bolster the growth of any company.
And in the eyes of your customers and partners, I believe it also sends a signal that you're not resting on your laurels. You're not just kind of defending the status quo. And particularly if it's strategic, as Jen mentioned, there's a strategy, there's a roadmap. We realize there's a missing piece in our product portfolio, or there's a customer segment that we just have no presence in. Could we build a presence there? Sure, just like we could build our own product. At what cost? And most importantly, a time horizon. So if it takes me, let's just back of the napkin, 3 years to really build and a product and penetrate that market, and by the way, find the talent to own that market, or could we piggyback that product in that market on an existing kind of marketing, sales, and customer success teams and motions? If it takes me 3 years to do that, and realistically 6 to 9 months to acquire somebody else who already has a very strong foothold in that space, think about it. Time value of money says, I'm 2 years in the bank, right? I've gotten to that space much more quickly, and I can now cross pollinate my existing relationships. I can perhaps, again, sell more to my existing clients. Certainly, again, get into a new sector, add to my product portfolio, and it just dramatically propels me to a different level. And that's the real key, is in really thinking about why and how would we do this? Where would this growth strategy come from? So in terms of the strategy that Jen mentioned, 7 steps along the way are really critical in thinking through and consistently executing. So how do we analyze the needs and the goals? How do we perform an evaluation of the current market? Again, scanning kind of what's happening. Really looking at not just benefits of M&A, but I would also encourage you to get a really strong sounding board together to also challenge the cons, also challenge the downside, also challenge the not a lot of people get excited about being around those that are going to suck the life out of them. So I'm not talking about negative Nancy's or negative, Johns, right? It's just you want that sounding board, because everybody, good people with good intent, come at this with, look at the amazing opportunity of what we could do, and seldom realize there's a 2x4 coming our way and there's a rusted nail in it. And that the ability for someone in the team to ask those questions. Once we agree, we're going to full force go ahead. But when I saw, and think about benefits of M&A, you also want to make sure it's a balanced approach and the downside of it. Jen, any comments on the first 3?
Well, I would say the looking at both sides of the coin also comes back to what we've talked about previously with like the opportunity funnel, for example, is not just what are you winning, but also what are you losing and maybe why, because that tells you just as much, if not more, than just your wins. So looking at both and having that balanced approach is really important, because it also then uncovers things that you may not have thought about. And it allows you to have those really hard, critical conversations about maybe cultural fit or doing your due diligence, or maybe the product roadmaps aren't perfectly in alignment. How are you going to get them better in alignment, or things like that, that really could underpin any future success if you don't address them at the onset.
Great point. Moving on to 4, identifying the synergies you're looking to capture. Again, the hypothesis should be, when we do this, here's what we anticipate the first quarter, the first 2 quarters, first year look like. I struggle to go beyond any projections 18 to 36 months, because none of us have a crystal ball. And even those are really strong, best guesstimates, if you will. That often leads to the preparation for diligence. Again, I've often talked about M&A as dating. Everybody's going to put their best foot forward early on. Once you start to get into the deal rooms and really start to peel back the onion, that's when you start to identify that you didn't know, or the product isn't as strong, or I love Jen's comments of this tech integration isn't going to fly, because I think they've kind of band-aided this together and not really thought much more holistically, more strategically in it. Plans for the integration. Again, good people, good intentions, a lot of great plans that fall apart because we don't have that integration thought out. And then last but not least, really aligning an M&A team, M&A practice, as we talked a lot about, with that growth strategy. Why are we doing this? How will we make this successful? Very specifically to our growth strategy is critical in having those really tough conversations at the onset. And by the way, it's amazing what we'll all talk ourselves into. Look what a fabulous idea this is. And yeah, without asking those really tough questions, we don't stop to think about, it might be fabulous, but at what cost? And can we realistically materialize the advantage, the advantages? Can we really advance our vision, direction as a market leader in this space when we do this? Jen, comments on the last few?
Well, I would definitely say having like some sort of a checklist or a roadmap or something like that dedicated to the actual integration is also going to be really critical, and making sure that everybody stays in alignment as you move down this path. So it's very similar to our analytics and our dashboards. It's the single source of truth, and everybody, both across and down, understands what's happening now, next week, et cetera. And so it's just making sure that everybody stays in alignment frequently and understands their part in that entire play.
And that cadence that Jen mentioned is critical. Again, leading up to it, in your due diligence, through the integration, and certainly beyond. So as I mentioned, it's really interesting to think about this as a theater act, kind of pre-acquisition. How do we really develop a long-term view of the resources that it's going to take to do this during the acquisition itself? That's when, between your announcement to, we often get involved in the spring, and really that migration, the due diligence and the migration planning, and then day one, what does that look like, and the implementation. Really critical to understand, based on number of laws, you cannot say certain things. You cannot begin this process until, again, the deal is done. A lot of people get excited and kind of jump the gun with the announcement. No. We still have a whole bunch of work to do, and what you really are working towards is post signing and all the post acquisition integration that needs to happen. Jen, your comments, your thoughts on this kind of process?
It's definitely one that needs to have a focused team related to it, and again, ensuring that everybody knows their part and what comes next. A lot of companies stumble when it comes to actually effectively integrating, if it's a new tech acquirement or if it's a new team acquirement. So having a plan for those road bumps, if you will, is really important.
And again, I want to reiterate, the announcement is the beginning of the journey. There's still a lot that goes on, and those that have earned the gray hairs and the wrinkles in that process realize it could fall apart at any point. So you want to make sure you're diligent, and we'll talk specifically about marketing, sales, and customer success through this. But the post-acquisition, post-merger integration has to happen after the signing, after that the middle section of the visual you're looking at is complete. So again, this isn't going to be anything shattering to those that have been around M&A, but there's some very critical success factors. So as we've talked a lot about the planning and executing of this integration, you're bringing two disparate teams, mindsets, views of the market, often products and services, but different, together. And really planning this and executing that plan becomes critical. The due diligence. Again, everybody wants to put their best foot forward. And, a lot of those skeletons in the closet don't come out in the dating, period. It comes out when really smart people ask really good questions about, that's interesting. How did you get there? And what does that look like? And can you share more about that? And why did you do that? So we're huge believers, and whenever we've been engaged on the marketing, on the sales, on the customer success side, on helping to visualize the growth strategy, on the breadth and depth of the relationships that both sides bring to the table, our role as part of that due diligence or part of that integration and even post-merger, post-acquisition integration team is that ongoing due diligence and asking really good questions about not just what they're doing, but why they're doing it. Jen alluded to the cultural issues. This is really critical in the marketing, sales, and customer success functions. We'll talk more about that. Identifying, screening, prioritizing targets, the M&A, early M&A strategy, achieving optimal price, and then negotiation process. Those are less so, but the top three, as you can see, really is a solid plan and an execution roadmap to how will we get there, the due diligence process, and really understanding how do we turn us and them into a we. Jen, comments on success factors?
I was just going to make that final point that you just made, that not only do companies in the M&A process need to look at the capabilities and the tech stack, so the technologies and the business merging together, but also the people themselves, because the people are what make everything run. And if you don't have a plan and a strategy to address those cultural things through M&A, you can not only acquire key talent, but you can also lose key talent that may have been a driving force in that company that's being acquired. So having a clear plan, not only for the technology side, but also for the people side, is going to be really important to find those synergies.
And anticipating, we often talk about within the marketing, sales, and customer success functions. I'm a huge believer, we are huge believers in identifying who are your flight risk early on, who are those, as Jen alluded, really talented people that this could be an impetus for them to, take those calls from the recruiters and potentially want to move on to their next opportunity. And then who are some of those untapped potentials? I also think about those as well, of who are the people that are really sharp, that are, either doing a fraction of what they're capable of today in their roles, or there's more upside. If we invest in them, is there more upside, and where and how we could get the most out of that talent? So again, the talent part is a critical one, and we'll talk more about that in a second, this is a good segue to, again, the analogy I often use is none of us sign 60 to 100 pages when we close on our home for, in fact, paying our mortgage. It's for when we don't. It's when, if we ever choose not to pay our mortgage, that's when it becomes problematic. So again, Aon and Mercer have some great research on the biggest drivers of deal failure through their interviews. Obviously, the integration implementation took much longer than expected. There has to be a sense of urgency. There has to be this understanding that time is money. And as we plan, as we integrate, as we implement, I struggle to see the company that we acquired, their logo, their branding, their vernacular, still as separate than ours a year later. And you just scratch your head like, what are we doing? And why is that dragging on? Why haven't we integrated them into kind of who we are, what we do in our culture yet, and what has to happen for them to kind of become a bigger part of our team? The second one, as you see, and as we've talked about, is the cultural integration issues. So and again, the joke in the industry is there's no such thing as a merger. It's always an acquisition. Somebody somewhere is actually buying somebody else. So your buying of this other entity and integrating them into yours, that means they're going to become part of your structure and your organization. And we don't need, this is the one that Jen and I often walk into. We don't need 2 CMOs. We don't need 2 CROs. We don't need 2 VPs of RevOps. We don't need 2 chief customer officers. So how do you go about identifying the right talent to lead the organization? Who is the move for talent with? Now, Jen has a brilliant idea. Put them in the room, let them duke it out.
You know those blow-up sumo suits that you see at the fair? Just put everybody in one of those and let them just go at it.
Right.
I think it's a brilliant plan.
Brings a whole new meaning to the next company picnic. It's gonna, yes, it is gonna be the battle for the role with the sumo suits. But joking aside, the cultural integration becomes a huge one. Inconsistent, unclear communication of the synergy. I've always said, when there's lack of information, people make things up. We just acquired this company, and did I tell you we're going out of business? Wait, where did that come from? Well, because you haven't communicated where we're going and what we're doing and the synergy with this entity that's going to be critical. Insufficient attention, priority to the workforce, the people issues. We're joking about the sumo suits, but this cannot be seen as the Hunger Games. This cannot be seen as, a zero-sum game that the only way I'm going to win if somebody else loses. So if you don't pay enough attention to the talent agenda, and that's collectively what we talk a lot about, how do we align the right talent with the right role and the outcomes? Poor, misinformed strategy, again, that's a big one. Jen talked about it sufficiently. Risk or liabilities not identified during due diligence, that's the 2x4 plywood with the rusted nail in it that's coming at your head. So somebody didn't ask enough questions. Somebody didn't ask the right questions. Somebody didn't go deep enough. We talked ourselves into it. We didn't do that level of due diligence. Direct correlation between the quality of your due diligence and the success of that acquisition. So again, surprises, risks, liabilities kind of rearing their ugly heads afterwards becomes really challenging. Insufficient execution capability or competency, we see this all the time. Again, a lot in Jen's practice, and Jen, I'd love your comment on this. The CEO, the executive team has unbelievable aspirations of where they want to go. The capabilities of the marketing, sales, customer success team isn't there. The processes aren't there. The tech stack is not there. How often do you see that? How do you address that? Where does that typically come up? And what do you do about it?
Well, it comes up more frequently than I'd like. I'd say over half the time that we go in and do work for M&A, do we see issues with capabilities, tech stack, and also just the level of due diligence, to your point earlier, of people asking those questions. Do they even have the broadest view of the technologies that are needing to be merged together? Because it comes down to things like lack of documentation. They're not incorporating the right people in those conversations. So maybe you were only talking to the marketing ops people. Well, there's sales and customer success ops as well, and there's different technologies there. And historically, ops people have been kind of territorial. And so by stomping all over what it is that they do, you're not going to get the best response from them, because then they're going to put their walls up and they're going to immediately be really defensive. So incorporating them into the process, incorporating operations in general into the process is going to be really key. And having them understand how do they fit in the broader picture is going to be absolutely critical to success. And to your point earlier of looking at not only how the company, like the branding, rolls together, but also how those technologies are going to be rolled together is going to be really important, not only for the end user, but for the internal teams as well, because you don't want to force salespeople or even marketing people to sign into 12 different systems to get their job done, to make it as seamless as possible. So all of that really needs to be put into a plan, and that plan has an owner. So not only are there teams keeping the wheels on the bus, if you will, but there's another team or parts of the team that are actually focused on that merging and that transition into whatever the new entity is going to be.
And just to build on Jen's comment, the leadership infighting, you see that as well. So one of the big failures towards the bottom, we see it roughly about 20% of the time. It is ugly. It really highlights cultural misfit that you're not really thinking about. And I listen, I'm as protective of my work and our team as anybody, but when the merger, when the acquisition is announced and you realize that we're going to have to go share this sandbox, we're going to go have to play nice with people that we may have seen as competitors or people that we don't know or trust. And wait, I've worked with Jen for a whole bunch of years now. What do you mean now I got to go work with somebody else? I'm within another team structure. And it becomes uncomfortable. With that discomfort, you need professional maturity to say the evolution of our team, our organization, is up to how I show up and how I carry myself and how I contribute to a positive, constructive dialogue, opportunity, company, product portfolio, go-to-market strategy moving forward, and not hang on to past perceptions or issues or things that are going to create that friction. And you got to think, how do I remove friction? How do I really show up as the best version of me? In essence, how do I build and nurture relationships with people that I don't know as well? It's that first day of school. Remember being in elementary school and you don't know anybody, you look different. I was from the Middle East, so I brought kebabs, in my lunchbox to school. You got to work. You have to work through those differences. But the more open, transparent, constructive, collaborative, communicative you become, I've also said, the leaders have to model the behaviors for their teams, eliminate certainly a lot of the challenges and opportunities that you're seeing here.
Well, and on that, before we move on, I would also say that the leaders need to ensure that there aren't side conversations. That's also very cancerous to a merger, is the teams appearing to be together, but then they get off into their little cliques, if you will, or they're on Slack, and the former leader of their team is talking about the new team differently than they would, and it's still an us and a them. So the leaders really need to embody that it is a we thing, because when you transform and when the companies merge together, those small, seemingly meaningless words and how they're used and how the meetings are held, et cetera, like those things then multiply, and the problems then will also multiply. So nipping that in the bud quickly, and also being transparent on where you're going and why you're going there, and getting everybody's buy-in, is going to help you grow better and faster than it is if you're going to let those things just fester.
And the worst thing they can do is fester, because that festering becomes a volcano. And we've seen this, of managers, leaders jumping down somebody's throat who has nothing to do with whatever it is you're aggravated, you're frustrated at. So again, it highlights, unfortunately, M&As highlight the best and sometimes the worst in all of us, and that professional maturity, that emotional intelligence, that emotional courage really sets great leaders apart from others. So consequences of unsuccessful culture, and again, we typically look at capabilities. We look at, given the joint organization's go-to-market strategy, how can the marketing, sales, and customer success functions not only be at their best functionally, each one, but how do we ensure the seamless manner with which they go to market? So as we've talked about, you in the baton race around the track, you go too fast and you're going to overlap. You go too slow, you're going to miss the handoff. You drop the baton, the race is over. So when we talk about cultural integration beyond the supply chain and the back office functions, if you will, our focus is marketing, sales, and customer success. So when the organization is distracted and lots of productivity, we don't sell anything. Campaigns go haywire. We drop the ball on implementation. And how do we ensure the success of that customer, regardless of which piece of the business they came from? When there's loss of key talent, that void becomes painful. Not only you're adding additional stress to others who are around, but you miss that capability. You miss Josh's digital or website expertise, or Sam or Susan's ability to understand how to effectively integrate our HubSpot with these other platforms, or our Marketo with all these other platforms that we have going on. So each of these cultural issues, failure to achieve critical milestones, the decreased employee engagement, the delayed integration, each of these have profound impact on the customer experience, revenue, current growth, projected growth, cost of growth. Every one of these that you're looking at in terms of unsuccessful cultural integration heightens when it's focused on marketing, sales, and customer success. Jen?
Yeah, I would definitely say that the key talent drifting away during mergers and acquisitions is a big one. I think in our research, we found that 50% of key talent drifts away to other opportunities, to recruiters, which is at a faster rate than non-critical talent. It also can stifle growth from a customer perspective, because if the customer calls and everyone's not cross-trained on all the new products, then people are being bounced from one to the other, and the user experience is then affected. So these are all very critical areas that need to be addressed intentionally when you're going after an M&A strategy.
So then, does more acquisitions equal faster growth? Possibly. SAP, IQ, and McKinsey did an analysis, and they saw that in their research, companies that did a number of deals per year created a higher compounded annual growth rate. So this is probably a cautionary tale. Those companies have got this down. If you do one or two plus deals per year, you've got a team, internal, external. You've got an M&A due diligence engine. You've got the process down of the type, really identifying, scorecarding the types of companies and their product portfolio, their customer base, their relationships. That'll be a great fit for us. So listen, there's nothing wrong with being the 13 or the first column that don't do a whole lot of deals a year. Those that, again, you can see are doing more deals, they start to create economies of scale and scope and really start to add marketing depth and really insights. They expand their sales team between direct and channels and really clever distributions by industry sectors, by industry, segments, the market segments. Their customer success is involved before the sale is closed, all the way through upsell and cross-sell, and they minimize churn. So they have this before, during, and after down. And the beautiful part is nobody's born with any of this. Most of us acquire talent that has learned this, and you're going to go through some bumpy periods, some really difficult professional, personal challenges. This is not for the faint at heart. But if you choose to pursue this path, it can absolutely accelerate, which what we're after is faster growth, intelligent growth, profitable growth, really strategic growth. Jen, your comments on companies that do a higher number of deals than their annual growth.
Yeah, the companies that do the higher number of deals, like you said, have a team, have a plan, sort of have a playbook. And so it doesn't create as much distraction as the ones that do maybe one or less than one acquisition a year, because then that pulls resources from the core function of the business. And so the first couple, document and iterate as you go. If M&A is part of your growth strategy, really be intentional on how you do it and create that plan with the first one. And then, so the second one is faster. And then the third one will be faster than that. And then you'll get into this cadence. But if you're really just going to do one-offs, it's going to be more of a take 2 steps back to take 3 steps forward type process because of that distraction. And you don't have all of those things down as seamlessly as other companies that do this more frequently.
That's a fantastic observation. And again, for our audience, if you can see the slide, you can see those that did their initial deal, their growth actually declined because of that distraction, because of the unknown, because of unknown territory, landscape, pitfalls they hadn't seen. But then you start to do 1 to 2, look at the size of the growth as 2x what they were doing previously. And it really drives the upside if you're not doing any deals. So expect the lessons. They're going to be painful. we overcome that, and the growth trajectory becomes really, really interesting moving forward. Just as a reminder, again, our passion is this intelligent and profitable growth. Our growth strategy practice between speaking engagements a little later today, but also salons where half the full day, I'm doing one of those tomorrow in Dallas. The strategy visualization, Lynn Wilson is our creative director, brilliant mind in terms of visually trying to help. And then you can see point solutions, coaching and development, and the M&A integration. On the M&A front, and Jen, I'd love your comment on this as well. We are really good in the due diligence process in terms of the relationship conversations. We're really good at supporting an internal integration team, and then post merger, really implementing and executing that integration plan, and really being the relationship specialist in how do we combine one on one and get 11. That's what we believe relationships can, and we've proven, can accelerate your ability to get to certain outcomes. So that's a lot of what my practice focuses on. Jen, you want to talk about RevOps and specifically the M&A integration side?
Yeah, so the RevOps function here at Knorr Group focuses on creating foundational tech stacks and helping companies grow and scale their capabilities, processes, and just the technology in general. With the M&A specifically, we help do that due diligence, both pre, during, and post, to create that roadmap of here's the landscapes that you're trying to merge together. Here's the best way to do it to ensure no data loss, to ensure seamlessness, helping with that training enablement side, and then also ensuring that the documentation and the different processes from the merging companies are then put together so that everybody knows the new go forward way of doing business. And those things are really critical, almost a three-legged stool, if you will. You can't have one without the other. And so really focusing on how things are done, as well as the people who are responsible for getting those things done, is a key part of what we do with our M&A integration services.
I want to reiterate Jen's comment and her practice of the pre, the during, and the after. Regrettably, the tech enabling of the M&A many times is an afterthought. Think about the merger of two instances of Salesforce, the complexity involved in that. Think of, one, we recently worked on a project where one client is using HubSpot, another one's using Marketo. So again, short of the sumo wrestling suits, how do you decide the tech stack moving forward? And by the way, there's several people that are supporting each. I like the talent, but now we're going to have to reskill or upskill them to really now embrace a different platform. In a bizarre manner, we were involved with an M&A event where the acquiring company decided to completely and utterly embrace the tech stack of the company they were acquiring. And it just baffles the mind of why and how kind of the leadership got there. But our goal is to support them and certainly be that independent sounding board, but really support that process. And the last part we want to talk about is, again, that customer lifecycle journey. We talked about, if you double click on that, if you drill down on that, our amplified time to impact process. And again, I want to put a kudos out to our partnership with the team at Versalytics, creating a scorecard that not just gives you a descriptive, here's what's happening, but a prescriptive, what we need to do with this and how you can go to market much more effectively, becomes an invaluable tool, by the way, during the pre, during, and after an M&A event. So we're really excited about this BizOps practice with Versalytics in really bringing data maturity, data capabilities, data visualization, data hygiene in M&A, really consolidating disparate data silo platforms, data mapping, normalization, the data quality, and these all become critical in really anticipating and working towards success of that event. So Jen, I'm going to give you final thoughts on, again, our world or our lens of the M&A space. What do you want our audience to take away?
Well, I would just say, if the focus of M&A is, well, every M&A focus is growth, and being really strategic and intentional with your growth strategy and finding those adjacencies and finding ways to fill the gaps to expand your audience is really going to be important. And being intentional in how you approach the M&A with your people, process, and capabilities is going to set you apart and make you more successful than just focusing on potentially the business synergies.
And for my part, again, I'm gonna the upside opportunities and the challenges I would submit is predicated on the relationships. The relationships before, during, and after will absolutely set you apart. They're critical in the due diligence, they're critical in the planning, and they become unbelievable connective tissue in the post M&A event. So on behalf of Jen Kors, my partner, thanks for joining us. Hope this has been of interest and value to you. We've got some great episodes coming up with guests. Hope you'll continue to join us each week, Tuesdays, noon Eastern, for our Intelligent Growth live stream. Thanks, everybody, and see you next time.